and we will be ready.
Hello there, Star Wars fans, and welcome to my breakdown of Season 2, Episode 4. It started off with all of the hallmarks of a side quest episode, but quickly turned into a story building episode with a strong setup as the stakes were raised at the conclusion. Overall, it was an action-packed, thoroughly enjoyable viewing experience, and left me believing Episode 5 is going to be a real treat for all Star Wars fans. So until then, here is the breakdown. We begin with Mando and Baby Yoda flying the Razor Crest, attempting to deal with the poor repairs the Mon Calamari made in the previous episode. There is a scene where we briefly see Mando lift his helmet to eat, maintaining his strict code even in the presence of the child. Mando decides to take a detour for further repairs on the way to Corvus by stopping at Nevarro. We then transition over to Nevarro at the entrance of the Mandalorian covert and armourer's lair, which is now being occupied by an Aqualish crew of thugs who are about to eat a weasel ferret-like creature. Cara Dune then steps in to fight them. They refer to her as the Marshal, and she takes them all down and retrieves their loot they have obviously stolen from the citizens of Nevarro. Mando lands on Nevarro and meets with Greef, Karga and Cara Dune. Greef offers his hospitality and sets mechanics to work on the Razor Crest. One of them is a Mimbanese alien who turns out to be an Imperial spy who plants a tracker on Mando's ship. As they stroll through the town, we see it as a thriving hub of trade and life now the oppression of the Empire has been removed. As the seasons roll on, I believe we will see Nevarro expand as a safe haven, and Mando will use it as his main base. As we witness its evolution and progression, we see a statue honouring the fallen IG-11 in the town square where the standoff against the Imperial forces occurred during the finale of Season 1. The cantina, or the client meeting area, has now been converted into a classroom where a protocol droid is the teacher. Greef persuades Mando it's safe to leave the child in the classroom, as they have business to attend to. Once left to his own devices, Baby Yoda begins to play up, using the Force to get his hands on the light blue, macaroon-looking snacks from his new classmate. We join the adults in Greef Karga's office, where the Mithril from Season 1 has taken up an administration role to pay off his debt to Greef for previously swindling him. Their plan is to make Nevarro safe by clearing an old Imperial Outpost which they believe is manned by a skeleton crew of Imperial forces. They take a land speeder to the base, and Mando uses his jetpack to gain access to the landing pad of the facility, where he clears the guards, but there is more than they thought. We see an Imperial troop transport variant which the Mithril calls a Trexler Marauder, which is carrying far more armaments and worth more on the black market. They advance into the base, past a corridor of speeder bikes. Reaching the control centre, they incapacitate the lone officer, disable security measures, and locate the main target of the heat shaft. They dodge Imperial patrols and reach the reactor room, which is similar to the Death Star reactor controls in A New Hope. The Mithril mentions the lack of guardrails as he manoeuvres to the controls, a dig at the Empire's historical lack of health and safety. They complete the sabotage mission and have 10 minutes to escape. During their exit, they run into two scientists wearing the cloning patches seen in the Camino facilities. They destroy their work consoles and die in a shootout. The gang have stumbled across a lab filled with tanks that have twisted humanoid shapes bearing similarities to Snoke floating lifeless inside them. This is our first physical piece of evidence we have seen of Moff Gideon's cloning operations. We could be witnessing the first attempt of cloning the Emperor and Snoke. The Mithril accesses the system and projects a hologram of Season 1's Dr. Pershing, who turns out to be the lead scientist reporting to Moff Gideon. He explains how the project has stalled without the blood supply of the child, and how they need Baby Yoda for his M count, which is assumed to be midichlorian count. The crew also learn Moff Gideon remains alive and active, spurring Mando to quickly escape by himself to secure the child. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang fight through the stormtroopers to seize the Marauder. Cara drives it off the cliff, landing on Mithril's speeder, completely flattening it. They set off through the canyon, pursued by scout troopers on speeder bikes. 2 of them lose control on their descent into the canyon, leaving 3 trailing the marauder. Greef occupies the main cannon, and they deal with the scout troopers by crushing and blasting them. As the base explodes, the Outland TIE fighters mobilise and pursue, giving us an Empire version of the trench run, with classic shots of the targeting computer and pilot close-ups. Greef shoots down a TIE fighter at close range, and the falling debris smashes his main weapon. They are seemingly helpless as they run back to safety, unarmed, dodging a barrage of the TIE's cannon fire. The TIEs pass overhead of the marauder and begin to turn. The Razor Crest swoops in from above, shooting the central TIE out of the sky, and with Baby Yoda in the cockpit, engages the remaining 2 in a spectacular aerial dogfight. Baby Yoda thoroughly enjoys the acrobatics and throws up his blue snacks, which are wiped away by the fatherly Din. Greef offers Mando his thanks and a drink to celebrate their win, but Mando stays on task and flies off to his objective of reaching Ahsoka Tano on Corvus. We cut to 2 X-Wings stationary at the settlement entrance. New Republic Captain Carson Teva from Episode 2 is interviewing Greef Karga about a report of the Razor Crest. Greef doesn't give up any information and the inquiries end. The pilot interviews Cara Dune on exit and states they could use a soldier like her in the New Republic. He also mentions the rise of activity and incidents in the Outer Rim, which the Core Worlds and New Republic are neglecting to investigate. I believe this is important scene setting to how the First Order gained influence under the New Republic's watch. The next shot is the iconic Star Wars shot of the underside of an Imperial vessel passing overhead of the camera. This is an Arquitens class Imperial light cruiser, a lesser known Imperial ship, but we do not know yet if this is Moff Gideon's command vessel, as I was expecting a grander Star Destroyer variant. On the command deck, an Imperial officer contacts the spy from earlier who has placed the tracking beacon on the Razor Crest for the Imperials. The officer then ends the transmission and marches through the well-organised ship to inform Moff Gideon of the child's ability to be pursued. This is where the episode really piqued my interest. As the blast doors open up, we see Moff Gideon observing 2 parallel rows of black armour-clad figures. On closer inspection, they look robotic and mechanical. Most likely the yet-to-be canonised Phase 1 Dark Troopers, previously brought to life in games such as Dark Forces and Galactic Battlegrounds. Or alternatively, they could be battlesuits prepared for Gideon's Force-sensitive test subjects to wear. The scientists in the back of the shot servicing the Dark Troopers have an insignia on their back, which bears resemblance to the Imperial Department of Military Research. This provides evidence that the Dark Troopers are probably not the only experimental weaponry Moff Gideon has his hands on. In Legends, every weapon of mass destruction was conceived through their counterparts: the Death Star, the World Devastators, and hypervelocity cannons. Either way, Moff Gideon now has a real threat in the form of these experimental troopers to face the incoming experienced Ahsoka Tano. The stakes have been raised to a more galactic scale. Now we can see more of Moff Gideon's arsenal, but even with our new knowledge of his cloning exploits, his ultimate goal is potentially still up for debate. I do believe we will see the formation of the First Order through Moff Gideon's Imperial remnants, and he will definitely live up to the evil villain we expect him to be. To my surprise, this episode maintained momentum, enhanced the Star Wars mythology, and sets it up for hopefully an epic Episode 5, which could act as a catalyst for future spin-off projects. It is an awesome time to be a Star Wars fan, knowing the future is becoming more positive and exciting with each episode. That is all for this video. Please feel free to comment your thoughts, leave a like, and consider subscribing. Thank you and goodbye.